Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in Modern. Today we're looking at Boros Stoneblade. Boros Stoneblade is an aggro mid-range deck that uses Fervent Champion to attach powerful equipment to itself for free, notably Sword of Fire and Ice. With multiple equipment out, every champion becomes a giant hasty threat. Apart from Champion, the deck runs a number of other mid-range threats including Ragavan, Fury, Solitude, and Stoneforge Mystic. Stoneforge can find Cauldra or other equipment like swords to put on Champion. Giver of Runes protects your creatures and can enable sword wielders to attack through blockers. Ranger Captain of Eos finds 1-drops including Fervent Champion, messes with Cascade decks, and can protect your permanents and spells on your combo turn. Magus of the Moon hinders big mana decks and Urza's Saga and can sometimes steal games by itself, especially if cast turn 2 off a Ragavan treasure. Boros Stoneblade isn't the fastest deck around and shouldn't be considered purely an aggro deck. It can have a tough matchup against linear decks like Belcher since it has little interaction and what it does have mostly targets creatures. It has to lean heavily on sideboard cards to shore up problem matchups. Thankfully, it's in white, meaning it has some of the best choices. Other than that, it's a straightforward, aggressive creature deck and there's not much else to say about it. Sunforger Combo. Sunforger Combo is an aggro combo deck that seeks to use Sunforger either for value or to combo kill the opponent. It's very similar to the Boros Stoneblade deck, except it has a combo. How the combo works. First, you need Sunforger in play, 4 mana, and a way to equip it for 0, either Fervent Champion or Pure Steel Paladin will work. Equip Sunforger for free, then unattach it, finding repeated reverberation, copying the next spell you cast twice. Equip and unattach Sunforger again, finding either Monomorphose or Big Score to generate 6 mana. Equip and unattach Sunforger another 3 times. The first one finds another reverberation. The second one finds a third reverberation, which is copied twice, copying your next spell 6 times. Lastly, find Lightning Bolt, which gets copied 6 times for a total of 21 damage. Fervent Champion or Pure Steel Paladin are required since you need a way to reduce the equip cost of Sunforger. If you run Pure Steel, you need to play a significant amount of artifacts to ensure Metalcraft is online. Otherwise, the deck runs a number of aggressive creatures, removal, and ways to find the combo. Stoneforge Mystic can search for Sunforger or other equipment like Cauldra Complete, Sword of Fire and Ice, or Shadow Spear. Sunforger has a lot of utility outside of its primary combo. First, don't forget that it grants an additional 4 power, which is nothing to sneeze at. Second, there are a number of other cards it can find for value. Valakut Awakening is a good one, or you can simply chain 3 Monomorphoses together to draw 3 cards. There are many other potential targets for it, which I'll cover during sideboarding. One of the best aspects of the deck is that, apart from the combo, the deck can play a reasonable aggro mid-range game with cards like Ragavan, Cauldra Complete, and Fury. Like any creature-based aggro mid-range deck, you can get outvalued or 1-for-1'd by dense removal. You're also quite susceptible to Chalice of the Void and Stony Silence effects to a lesser extent. Sideboarding. Sideboard cards break down into 3 categories: traditional sideboard cards that are good in various matchups, tutor targets for Ranger Captain, and tutor targets for Sunforger. Rest in Peace and Sanctifier Onvec are graveyard hate, and the latter fights red-black decks like Death Shadow. Giant Killer is a removal spell for big creatures like Murktide and can be found by Ranger Captain. Burrington Forge Tender is an anti-red deck card, protects your creatures from burn spells, and can be found by Ranger Captain. Blood Moon and Magus of the Moon fight big mana decks and strategies relying on lands like Urza's Saga. Next are the Sunforger targets. Wear Tear is anti-artifact and enchantment hate. Note that you can't cast both halves with Sunforger since Fuse only works from your hand. Boros Charm can be a burn spell or protect against sweepers and other removal. Silence stops Cascade or protects your combo turn. And finally, Boil is good against blue decks but can also annihilate the lands of any deck running Dryad of the Elysian Grove. Tips and tricks. The colored protections the swords grant are far less important than their triggered effects. In general, Fire and Ice is the best one, followed by Feast and Famine. That isn't to say though that the protections are irrelevant. Yes, you should board in Feast and Famine against Yawgmoth. Anything with haste becomes better later in the game when you have enough mana to equip it immediately, including dashed Ragavans. Fervent Champion doesn't make the equip costs of more expensive equipment like Cauldra free, but reducing them by 3 is still great. If Sword of Fire and Ice is equipped to Fervent Champion, other champions can't target it with their attack trigger. The same goes for if you give Pro Red with Giver of Runes. If you give protection from colorless to a creature with Giver of Runes, any equipment on it will fall off. If a creature with First Strike deals damage to a player with one of the swords, for example Fervent Champion or granted via the Wandering Emperor or Cauldra, the sword will trigger before other creatures deal damage. The last point also applies to Fury, which will trigger equipment twice from Double Strike. If the germ for Batterskull died and you want to bounce and replay it with Stoneforge Mystic, you can activate Stoneforge and hold priority and then bounce Batterskull. That way, if they kill Stoneforge in response, you'll still get your Batterskull. You can activate Den of the Bugbear multiple times to create more than one token when it attacks. The tax from Esper Sentinel increases as its power does from equipment attached to it. Fervent Champion is more valuable as a combo piece than as a beater. If you have the option to play it early or do something else, you should probably take a different path. Chipping in for 1 or 2 extra damage doesn't matter if you combo with it later. If you draw 2 repeated reverberations or all your monomorphoses or lightning bolts, you can no longer combo with Sunforger, but you still have access to value plays and a beatdown plan. I hope you've enjoyed this look at Boros Stoneblade and Sunforger Combo. I want to thank my fellow players in the Magic community for whom sharing their experiences helps make these guides possible. You can find additional resources, such as an up-to-date deck list, in the description. If you think I left out anything important or got something wrong, please leave your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned to see what deck we look at next time.